everyone. My name is Christy, and I'm part-time landscape architecture student. And this is my second presentation. My research area is multiculturalism in urban landscape. And my research question is, how can the practice of urban design accommodates cultural diversity and contributes to positive multicultural communities? My research site is Cook Street West. Cook Street West is a highly mixed and diverse neighborhood with high population densities, and 66% of its population come from overseas, just like me. And Cook Street West are mainly occupied by new immigrations, international students, and travelers, people all over the world. And this is a place with many different ethnic groups. As we can see, there are lots of existing apartments in Cook Street West, and few new apartments is planning to build here too. The population density in this area is 10,000 people in 1 square kilometer. It is very high compared with rest of Auckland. Sorry, I have to move the projector a little bit fit to the screen. At the moment, there are few problems in Cook Street West. Despite the huge population densities, the whole area is still car-oriented, as you can see from map. And this neighborhood are isolated by the major arterial road, and the street activities are extremely limited for local residents due to the traffic volume, lack of communities, lack of amenities. The residents in Cook Street West are housed in the multi-apartments. So how can we, working with the insights of cultural diversity, to create a new kind of public space that can convert the existing Cook Street West from an industry and car-dominated style into a place that's more relaxing and enjoyable for people living here, a place that can contribute to positive multicultural communities. So based on observation, analysis, and case study I did in my previous stage, I come with these 4 solutions: parking park, street walking park, sky garden, and multi-language street signs. And now I will go through each of them. My first strategy is the parking park. As we all know, Auckland is in its transformation into a low-carbon city, and limited supply of on-site parking was asked in Auckland Unitec plan. So in response to that, I'm proposing a parking park. This is a scenario that converts some existing parking space into a park. A park can be shared with people and cars. It is a scenario to convert some inactive car-owning space into a recreational green parks. There could be 2 types of parking parks. The first is recreational park in picnic area. So this is where picnic is. And a closed parking park in this area. As we can see at the moment, the only purpose of these areas are for car parks, and this area has very good connections. These areas connect to nowhere at the moment, so I'm proposed to convert it into a parking, into something like this. By using the glass parking technology, we can have glass parking above car park surface, and this park area most shop and business have car park right in front of them. And those shops are hiding behind those cars. And those cars act as a perfect shelter to hide the shops from the pedestrians and people who is living nearby. And we can see from this imaging, this is the existing situation in Cook Street West. Imagine how slick you need to be to get around this area and going into the shop. And the images in left, this one, which we can see the whole images. But this is a type of shop that I like most. The shop doors are fully open to the pedestrians and selling the most attractive goods. And it will be much better if the shop owners is not sitting in there. And to convert this kind of situation, I'm proposing to convert some existing shopfront car spots into a pocket park. A park where people can sit and gathering in front of shop when they are shopping around Cook Street West. And this park can also be designed to extend the character of the shop or the business. For example, pocket park contain Korea cultural elements with distinctive Korea characters can be placed in front of a Korea supermarket. And it will become a place where the shop owner can sell their goods, sell their fresh kimchi or fresh tofu. We can imagine if we have more of this little pocket park along the road to replace the existing car spots, the street will read much more attractive, and we will have this fancy dynamic all the way along the road. And walking and cycling experience will become much more interesting. And my second strategy is street walking park. Along Cook Street, this area. The Cook Street exists along State Highway 1 used to be so important. It is back to time before 2003. It is the only exist connect State Highway 1 into State Highway 60. So this portion of road used to be so busy, full of cars. That's why the carriage road from here to there is about 22 meters wide, and the footpaths beside here are less than 1 meter wide. But as the motorway layout changed after 2003, people don't need to get off State Highway 1 to go to State Highway 60 anymore. So the traffic volume in this area are dramatically reduced. So based on that, I'm proposing to change this portion of road from 7 lanes into 3 lanes. Then we will be able to fit a 12-meter wide middle road park into these sections. And this middle road park could be used by pedestrians or the people living in these areas. It also will become an important link the apartment areas with tourist areas. parking path around Kismet area with a link into Rigdan Harbour and Victoria Park. Okay, here is my strategy, Sky Garden. At the moment, we can see there's lots of apartments in Cook Street West, but none of them provide any green spaces for their residents. When I'm living in the Cook Street West, I don't know any of my neighbors. The whole year I'm living there, I don't know who is living beside me. And now I'm moving to a house in Union. I know everyone in my street because we share parks, we share community gardens, and we exchange vegetables from our backyard. But when living in Cook Street, there's hardly any interactions between the neighbors. So in order to change this kind of situations and to create sense of communities for the apartment residents, I'm proposing to have a rooftop garden. The Sky Garden is a rooftop garden. It could be public or semi-public. It could contribute to existing apartment or built on top of the new apartments. There's a new development happening in this area. It is a multiple purpose rooftop gardens, but also is a unique New Zealandese gardens with views of Auckland's distinctive landforms and natural characters. Normally the penthouse, this is the penthouse in Sydney. Normally the penthouse are only for rich people, but I'm proposing to have a Sky Garden and share these views with everyone. Because the Sky Garden is situated in these unique urban locations, that will help the residents in Cook Street West understand what is Auckland and its distinctive volcanic geographic features. Sky Garden is a place that people could spend some of their spare time together, and is a place that they can have some interactions with their neighbors. It also will help in the diverse neighborhood to achieve kind of togetherness. This is some examples of rooftop gardens all over the world. And my last strategy is multi-language street signs. The multi-language street signs are used in many countries. It is very common for major world cities. In some regions, the place and the street have their names in all local languages. The street name normally contains some historical meanings. Multi-language street sign can sometimes enrich those meanings and become a bridge or closing the cultures. For example, this is a Hay Street sign in Sydney. Hay Street is situated in West Sydney CBD, and its name are coming from famous hay market there before. But in later 19th centuries, the Sydney Chinatowns began to establish around Hay Street, and that's when people translate the Hay Street into Chinese. Now we have Hay Street, and we also have Hay Street. Very, very similar pronunciation, but different meanings. He in Chinese means happiness. It represents happiness that immigrations found their new homes and happiness settled in. So one street sign, but two interpretations represent all the history happening in the place. So I'm proposing we can have our street names in CBD translate into multi-language too. For example, Cook Street, the name is in the memory of Captain Cook, and by translate it, the newcomer will carry on the legend of Captain Cook and add some new stories and meanings to the place. And those little changes could act as positive icons that promote interactions and exchanges in this culture diverse neighborhood. And they are my 4 strategies. And as you can see at the moment, those are just few hand drawings in this stage. And the next stage of my research, I focus more on how to develop those ideas. Thank you.
Okay, thanks very much, Grace. And questions from the panel?
Grace, I think those are fantastic ideas, and that area of the city is in desperate need of improvement. And so congratulations to you for giving that some creative thought. Intuitively, your design solutions would work. That's just from my point of view, but how will you know that they will work at the end of this project, or how will you have some, not necessarily, you're not actually going to put it into practice, it's just a design, but what evidence will you have that this kind of thing will work?
We have examples all over the world that the things is working very well for the communities.
Oh, okay, so there's been studies of these developments that have shown.
Yeah, it shows how successful those are. For example, we have similar working hard in Canada, and this is very successful streets, link the city down to the harbor, and this is very similar scenario as well.
Yeah, I think it's a really great concept. I'd like to see that happen in that street too. It looks fantastic. What kind of, when people evaluate how well this has worked, this particular example, what kind of methods do they use to evaluate that?
This is kind of a hard question. And I think how successful design is only kind of judged by the residents living there.
Right.
From
You just can't ask people.
But this is kind of strategies I could like to improve the area from multicultural point of view.
Thank you.
I'm quite interested in when you're talking about all these other precedents, I was sort of wondering about how does this sort of engender the multiculturalism. But when you talk about the signage, I thought that was really quite interesting, that you can actually reinterpret place names by, for whatever community might be living there, or communities. But from a landscape point of view, which I think is quite challenging, I don't know really how you would do this, is what you send to, when you kind of lay something down, I mean, for retail, I can see that sort of different sort of communities having the Vietnamese shop or the West African, the different sort of retail shops that attract people to work. But often you go into migrant communities around cities and they are almost more singular. Chinatowns, for example, with the Jewish quarters in Paris, or the various quarters around Paris. And to generate multiculturalism, I think, is much more interesting and about a harder problem, because it's not sort of necessarily catered to a single migrant community. It's trying to deal with multiple ones. You talked about saying maybe you are going to get into that sort of level of design at the next stage. And it'll be very interesting to see how you can try and find examples of precedents and how that might work. Because that's your real thing you're trying to address, is multiculturalism.
I think every design solution needs to be localized. Why I'm not proposing like Chinatown or Koreatown in the CBD, because I think in New Zealand we have this unique situation that different cultural groups, they are not like residents as that close as the rest of the world. That's I'm proposing to have this pocket park, instead have a whole street of Chinatown or Koreatown. And this actually is happening in Street West already. Those Korea supermarkets, they do have a little space in front of them that what I'm trying to do, and just try to do something really simple. Maybe just take out of cars and have some simple arrangement that can enhance the character of the shop. A solution for now, but maybe after a few years it could be changed.
Yeah, 'cause I think it's a really interesting and quite a challenging one to overcome. And it'd be nice to see that you can come up with solutions that can start to make it happen. So I think I think you're absolutely right. Auckland is a very multicultural society, and it'd be really, really good to celebrate it.
Now welcome to my next presentation.
Yeah.
I was just thinking with the idea of the pocket parks and the street parking and whatnot, with the Avon River precinct that's being developed in Christchurch, the central thing with that was sort of the weaving of cultures together, and obviously they were using different methods to do that, but a central part of it was the planting, so mixture of native and exotic planting and things like that, as well as looking at different historical contexts from different periods, and as well as the new communities that make up that one community in Christchurch. I just wondered if anything like that, as your design sort of develops as planting or any other sort of historical and sort of more contemporary context, will they be part of the design, or how will those parks sort of be developed?
Yeah, that's very interesting suggestions. I think at the moment Auckland is trying to protect its natural habitat by promote using the native species all over the region. But I think in the CBD area we could have a little bit of variations. For example, for those small pocket park, we could have like pot plants of bamboos or something like similar to illustrate different characters. And this will be in my next stage that I will to investigate a little bit further.
There's some people have done sort of analysis of regenerative design in South America and Africa too that I can know of. And where what they've really done is they've sort of looked at, call it Western imposed ideas on communities, which is townships, really streets. So this is how you will live, and it's because this is how we live. But those communities don't actually sort of thrive, they don't work. And what they've done is they've gone and really analysed how people behave and what do they really need. So the idea that we might say hanging out in the street corner is you're obviously selling drugs and delinquent, and you're no good youth. Whereas for an African society, hanging out in the corner is actually a really, really important thing.
Yeah.
And as opposed to turning that into something that's antisocial, is actually making those street corners very social. You do the opposite. And how people actually want to behave. You actually look at their behaviour, what they do, and then provide infrastructure which is suitable to their natural cultural behaviour. And I think that would be interesting to actually think about these sort of things in this context, as opposed to maybe just rolling out the standard sort of, we would say would be big landscape street.
Yeah, I did a survey. I did like four months survey at Cook Street West, and I surveyed around 20 people living in these areas. And during my last presentation, I just showed some survey results that sourced from the people, from the community who's living there. They are quite not have difference between low context culture group and high content culture group. And from the low content culture group's point of views, their thinking landscape is more about like natural surrounding and they want views. And from like high content culture group, those people have totally different ideas. And when I'm asking ideas how to improve it and where you like to meet people, they have totally different ideas. They told me, oh, I just want like the street to be far more interesting and read as more urbanism as possible. And those kind of difference, I will incorporate it into my design, into the actual design of Sky Garden and of the Pocket Park in my later stage.
Grant, did you talk a little about research the process?
Well, I guess that was my question really about, how would you know, how would you find out that these things work? And maybe that's not a requirement of this particular project, but I guess ultimately how these things work is a subjective thing, isn't it? How do I feel about it really? Does it work for me? And the interesting problematic that you were throwing at us is that, and that you had mentioned as well, is that there are kind of cultural differences in the way in which people move from place to place and gather in groups. But I think what you're saying is you want to encourage people to gather in groups, but also people of different ethnicities to interact in a civil kind of manner and have opportunities and spaces where they can do that. But I guess the social scientist in me keeps asking, how would you test that to see if it actually works? Maybe that's going further than as a requirement of this particular project, I'm not sure.
It's a good question.
It was just following on from the point really about, I'm just looking at that image and I'm wondering if one of the things about a walking park is understanding actually how many people walk in it and how often and when do they do that, and those are quite measurable things really. You can stand and you can observe those things, and I'm just interested in the image because it's actually very barren. I think there's only one person.
That's really not many people.
Yeah, and so, like it's a kind of quite beautiful design, but you can actually measure things like walking, how many people when they're using it. It's part of an evaluation.
Yeah, because this is a commercial imaging, so I'm not sure like when the photography took it and if there is any requirement to ask people to clean the site.
I know, they've been photoshopped out or something, I don't know.
Montreal one tastes very good at home.
Grace, just a couple of words from me. I really enjoyed your presentation, and I think there's a good range of strategies that you are thinking up in order to answer your question. I was pleased that you identified the change over time in the use of Cook Street and how it's no longer used so much. And I found myself wondering about what future changes might happen in this area. So I wonder if you can either talk about it now or next time you present, but I'm pretty sure that there's quite a big plan for part of that quarter just below your site that, the big building that you pointed to as being where people go to. Is more residential development is planned for down there, isn't there? And I just wonder if it might be the sort of framework of the council plans for future development might be something that you can build into how you talk about the area too.
Yeah, this area used to have residential plans to have 6 terraces around those areas, but the plans was abandoned 2 years ago, and the whole area was sold to new owner. And what's happening now is the new owner try to keep this building as it is, as a workshop, as a city workshop, and
You
Okay,
maybe
that's good.
How's what's going to happen?
Oh, God, I mean, it changed so much, and it's been, when it was rural land, but it will eventually, I think, it will develop and become residential, mixed-use precinct of residential and commercial. I was going to say the other one I think, which is that you probably would be interesting if you did try and address, would be the idea of the gateway to the city.
Yeah.
When you come down Nelson Street through just the other one.
Nelson.
Next one.
That one, yeah.
There.
Yeah.
That's where most people arrive by taxi to Auckland, and that's what they encountered when they turn up. And you go, it's arriving at the worst possible part of the city.
And this is a terrible color structural strategy.
Yeah. And similarly, if you come from the North Shore, can you come up Cook Street there as well? There'll be another. The idea of gateway will be quite good because they are sort of arrival points to the city.
And while doing my site observations, I found there's very interesting things that during the lunchtime, that most of people in this area just go crossing the street without obeying traffic signs. They just go cross, and cars actually have to slow down for them. And sometimes they just cross like by a group of people, and car have to stop. And this area actually become like very popular for people, and we need to have sorts of solutions instead of have these 8 lanes highways to the entrance of the CBD.
I wonder whether people are gravitating towards Queen Street, and you mentioned the link with Victoria Park, or Victoria Park Market in particular, which we all know now is a dreadfully underutilised space, and the City Works depot is developing. So I wonder whether somehow people can be attracted more in that direction for lunch or whatever it is they're going out for, and not having to do the run across the 4-lane highway that Nelson Street is. But you only alluded to Victoria Park very briefly, and I wonder whether you had any more thoughts about attracting people in that direction.
The sources at the moment is on in those areas, we can have this straight walking path connect them all the way down to this handicap area, and there's not much traffic down here. And this area, the work page, actually, this is a new development here, and many people use it as a skateboard park. And the source is we can connect people from this direction all the way down to that direction, and that's where the Victoria Park is. And if we can have a nice connection to Victoria Park, to Victoria Market, and then people can go all the way down to that harbour. That is great connection.
Grant, just going back to your one about how do you measure the success of these, you should probably have a look at the work that's done in Beirut, the regeneration of Beirut. Because what they did in Beirut was they kind of came to a plan where they said to rebuild Beirut, they just gave it, took all the property owners and made them part of a company and said, right, you charge of redevelopment of the city, and as a reward we're going to give you some of this prime waterfront real estate. And when they went through the process of rebuilding it, they didn't build the building first. What they realised was that the landscape was crucial to regeneration. So the spaces between the buildings became really important. So they could actually, and they used it in a way whereby they increased the value of the land by starting slowly. Good streetscapes and ends and buildings. Increased the value, so it made it attractive, people want to be there, and so they rolled it out. So it'd be worthwhile actually studying that. So as landscapers are generating for quality urban renewal, and can it do it? Because what's the benefits you can get from this in terms of increased land value, increased rental opportunity, and so as a catalyst. I think so the economic benefits will be quite good for you to try and quantify.
Yeah. In one way, I think the pop-up development around this neighborhood will definitely increase land value. But actually, the apartment price in this area is already very expensive.
But the quality is terrible.
Yeah, although the quality is terrible, but the house in this area is like 2-bedroom apartment around 700,000. Already.
Okay, who still continue to relax? No? Supervisor?
No, it's not today, Matthew.
No, come on.
I'm interested in the project. I think it's a fantastic site. I like the way Grace is sort of teasing it out, and the arrival at the 4 strategies is really exciting for us because it means that we're starting to get on the ground. Things are starting to happen. And there are precedents for the Sky Garden. One of those new developments has one on the roof there. So I think the progress is good. I like the way Grace is working. I'm really pleased that you spoke about your questionnaire and the findings about those 2 groups, the high and the low, because that's where the ethnic and multicultural element creeps into design, and that's how it's starting to manifest. And I'm sure there'll be more of that too.
I will incorporate more of those parts in the actually detailed design of those 4 strategies, the different views that people have, and how to combine those 2 views into one development. And as Hamish mentioned, there's a new development in this area. It's called Sugar Tree. And they are proposing a rooftop garden on top of their development. That's how it comes out. I don't want to show it because this images looks ugly, but that's what you get from the top of the apartment. That's the view I want to share it with residents in Culturalism, because you can have an idea of how those geographic and natural characters surrounding the city. You can have views of Harbour Bridge and have views of Devonport and have views of Mount Edens. Maybe that's not important for people who's living in New Zealand many years, but it is very important for newcomers, especially people arriving in Auckland less than 1 year. They need to understand what is Auckland, and that's how we achieve togetherness and to solve those cultural conflicts.